Hello everyone and welcome back to Killershrewfans 12 Days of Reviews, and have I got a big one for you today. It's this, the Mattel Legacy Collection Apatosaurus. Released in the fall months of 2021, this was yet another exciting addition in an already strong year for Mattel, as it marked the second large sauropod figure produced for the Legacy line, the first of course being the much celebrated Brachiosaurus. But if you recall my review of that figure, I did have some problems with it despite how amazing it was overall, namely in that it felt like there were just a lot of missed opportunities with it. So 2 years later, has Mattel learned from their mistakes and improved their creative approach to this next massive exciting offering? Well, let's find out. Real quick, we gotta do a brief overview of the packaging. The faces of the box feature the same imagery and diagrams with the artwork depicting a scene from Gyrosphere Valley, complete with various sauropods, a Stegosaurus, and even Zack and Gray themselves as they roll through the field. Of course, the centerpiece of the image is this rendering of the Jurassic World Apatosaurus. You've also got a size indicator boasting a 41-inch toy, as well as an image of a child having the time of his life handling the massive figure, and I think this is going to be something a lot of parents are going to be seeing on Christmas Day this year, as I'm sure this thing made a lot of wish lists. Then of course you have the Legacy Collection logo in the top left corner, and like I said, this idea is repeated on both sides, only one is presented in a horizontal fashion while the other is vertical. And whereas I'm sure this is done for retailers so that they have the option to place these big boxes on shelves in whatever way is conducive to their displays, it's also good for collectors like us as it gives us that option as well. The bottom left-hand corner of the vertical side also advertises the Raptor Squad, which is it's just the most pointless thing Mattel has ever done in my eyes, and a blemish on this beautiful box. Meanwhile, the sides of the box feature the Legacy logo, as well as images showing the articulation offered by the figure. The opposite side has the same image of the kid, as well as measurements, and the top just has the logo. Then on the bottom you have got some one-time assembly instructions. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but just in case you need a little extra help, it's there for you. Then of course you're reminded to get the Jurassic World Facts app so that you can scan a digital copy of your dinosaur into your phone and keep tabs on your collection while also learning all sorts of cool facts about the dinosaur in question. But enough about the packaging, let's get to the figure itself. And there she is, all assembled and ready for a review. I gotta say, as far as first impressions go, this thing does not disappoint. It's a big, beautiful beast of a figure, and I'm always down for some sizable sauropods. So it's great to see Mattel continuing in this ambitious pursuit. As you can see, she can't even fit on my review space, so yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. If we go in for a closer look, the first thing that I must comment on is the fine detail. This head features all of these amazing wrinkles and skin folds, really emulating the design of the animatronic we see in the film. The gray dry brushing then helps all of that detail pop off of the face, and you can definitely see that when you look at it from the top. Meanwhile, the underside features great skin folds over the muscles of the lower mandible. Right away, this feels a marked improvement over the sculpt of the Brachiosaurus, as the detail is just so much more defined than what we got on that figure. The Apatosaurus does feature an articulated jaw which opens to reveal the peg-like teeth surrounding a sandpaper tongue. I gotta say, this is certainly a bit of a doofy addition to the figure if you ask me. The hinge on the jaw just feels so bizarrely placed, and the thinness of the lower mandible is a bit strange. I'll also say that the combination of the gaping mouth with the half-lidded, listless gaze of the black eyes really gives this Apatosaurus the look of someone who found the good tree stars, if you catch my drift. I gotta be honest, it kinda cracks me up, just, whoa, hey man, I feel like that star is getting bigger, dude. Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. Once you move on from the head, the detail does get a little less defined, but it's still quite apparent, with lots of wrinkles, skin folds, and striations adorning the tensing cords of muscles along the massive neck and gathering beneath the throat. At the midsection, you can see some more folds of skin forming at the base of the neck as they're pushed up against the shoulder blade. The muscle tones along the flank have all been adorned by a leathery crosshatch texture, and you can see some great areas of sagging skin down around the gut and pulling at the base of the tail. The tail itself features the same wrinkles and striations as the neck as you move down its undulating form to that curling tip. As far as the legs of the figure go, they're quite well toned with immediately recognizable musculature feeding down into the feet. I also appreciate all the areas of bunching skin around the elbows, kneecaps, and above the ankles as the weight of the animal pushes the skin against the bracing feet. The feet themselves are not good. For one thing, they feel a bit oversized, which is completely unnecessary on a quadruped, I gotta say. I get wanting to do it for the bipeds, it doesn't bother me there since balance is a concern, but for something with 4 feet on the ground, why do you need bigger feet? Are you worried about weight distribution? Is it too front heavy, so you need big feet to counter that? Well, maybe if you made the tail a little bigger, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's go on back to the feet. The toe count is also off, and again, I don't know how you can get that wrong. The image is right there on the box. Not to mention all the renders you see when you just Google JW Apatosaurus. It's all right at your fingertips, so why they chose to give it all the nails and in the incorrect orientation is a mystery to me, to say the least. To add insult to injury, they're not even painted, which on a $55 figure, come on. Put a little more effort into that and just paint the freaking nails. Either that or give us the proper feet, then you'd have less nails to worry about painting. Win-win. So yeah, the feet are among the worst parts of this figure and a definite step down from the well-proportioned feet we see on the Brack. If we move along the underside, you can see where all of that bunching up skin gathers and folds beneath the neck, as well as some great areas of bunching skin above the pectorals. All of this has been adorned with subtle leathery skin texture, and once you hit the feet, you can see the QR code. There's a good look at that for anyone looking to scan this into their phone. So yeah, that's the sculpt on this Apatosaurus. Overall, when it comes to the fine detailing, I think it's an improvement over the Brack, as all of that texture feels a lot more crisp across the board. That isn't to say the Brack detailing is bad, just less defined. And that's about where the improvements with the sculpt end, unfortunately. Everything else feels either more of the same or a step down. The most egregious talking point in this regard would be the overall proportions. I already mentioned how the feet were terrible in relation to the body, but just as bad is that tiny tail. It's way too short, and no amount of curling up can disguise that. I do wish it had come in 4 pieces as opposed to only 3 with an additional attachment for the tail to give it some extra length. I mean, the Brack can get away with a stubby tail because that's how it is. And I get the concern of having a piece that gets too long and or thin because perhaps it would be too fragile. But if you're making a dinosaur with a long whip-like tail, this dinky thing just doesn't cut it. If you're worried about plastic breaking off, make it rubber. I mean, they did it with the Pentaceratops. Why can't they put a little more effort into the materials of this massive thing? It's just very disappointing to see the usual Mattel issues with proportions plaguing a figure that I think deserves a little more effort in the design phase. As far as the paint job goes, it is a little more involved than what we see on the Brack. The base tone is a dark greenish gray with the same light gray color from the dry brushing on the face, striping down across most of the figure. It's good to see it actually goes a good length down the tail, so credit where credit is due, I guess. The underside then features this olive tone that runs from the lower jaw down to the base of the tail. In comparison, the Brack was just a grayish brown with a darker dry brushing across the dorsal region and cream underside. So yeah, there's a little more in terms of visual interest on the Apatosaurus. When it comes to articulation, it's much the same, but you do get some extra points here and there. I already mentioned the jaw does open like on the Brack, but the base of the head can also be moved on the Apatosaurus, unlike the Brack. It's a ball and socket joint, so you're able to rotate it around and move it slightly up and down, so that's nice at least. The base of the neck can then be turned to the right and left, but unlike the Brack, you can't rotate it, which seems a bit limited and lame. But hey, at least the head rotates, right? I think that's why they did that point of articulation, but it's just not the same. The legs feature limited articulation. They can be rotated forward slightly and backwards, and they do have the typical lock-in points to prevent them from going any further. So yeah, not a lot of movement down here, although I guess on something this big, it's not essential. Meanwhile, the tail has the same side-to-side movement of the head. You can wag it back and forth like an excited dog, and the tip can be rotated about since it's technically a separate piece. Too bad it couldn't be longer. And that's about it for articulation. There are a couple more points than we see on the Brack, but overall, I don't know that it's an improvement. I wish the neck or tail were on a ball and socket joint so they could be rotated and or move up and down instead of just, side to side. That's a very underwhelming decision, and if you ask me, it severely limits playability and posing options. And if you're gonna have a figure that's really only good for sitting there, then you might as well make it as posable as possible for display variations. So yeah, overall, I don't know that I would say this piece is better than the Brak. The sculpt work and paint are a bit more involved, but it suffers from a lot of the same limited creative decisions than the last one did. And things like proportions have even gotten much worse here. Although it is still cool given its impressive size, it's just missing something to really put it over the edge in my eyes. I don't see why Mattel is so opposed to real feel skin on these larger figures with such limited articulation. They did it with the Mosasaurus, and then that's about it. And they proved with the Pentaceratops that they can do it. I'm not saying the whole thing has to be rubber, God no, but why not the torso or the tail or the neck with a bendable wire for posing? I think that would add so much to the piece while also fixing some of the problems I have with it, namely the limited articulation and poor proportions. I mean, if you're charging around $60 for this thing, why not do something a little more special than what we see on every other figure in the line? I don't know, I guess I'm just disappointed so little has changed between this and the Brak, even with 2 years of development in between. All of that said, the obvious draw of this figure is the fact that it's another big sauropod for your parks, and in that department it does not disappoint. The box advertises a 41-inch figure, or around 104 centimeters, and if we bring in the tape measure, sure enough, that's about what we got. Meanwhile, it comes in at right around 12 inches off the ground, or 30.5 centimeters. The Jurassic World Apatosaurus was right around 90 feet long, which would put this beast in that 125 scale range. For size comparisons, I'll start with some fellow Mattel figures, also from the Morrison formation. Here it is with the Mega Destroyer Stegosaurus. Next I brought in the Dual Attack Battle at Big Rock Allosaurus. Then here it is with an in-box Roar Attack Ceratosaurus, since I currently don't have an open Cerato to show off. Whoops. And finally, here's some more footage of it alongside the Brachiosaurus, which absolutely towers above the Apatosaurus, just as you would expect. Now for some other Jurassic comparisons. Here are some standard issue ones I have to make, starting with an Attack Pack Velociraptor, since that's the most common mold Mattel has done. Then we have Carnage, the Action Attack Carnotaurus, still their best in my eyes. And of course I have to bring in a T-Rex. Here it is with the Thrash and Throw, still my personal favorite Rex from them. And of course the Indominus Rex, which does pair quite well alongside this Apatosaurus. Even if her Apatosaurus killing spree took place off screen, it is still fun to have them together for display purposes. And then we have one of the 3 3/4 inch human figures. It's Owen Grady. Who else? And he is absolutely dwarfed by this massive Apatosaurus. I'd go so far as to say he looks too small, especially if you wanted to recreate the heartbreaking scene from the film for hours of fun. And yeah, comparing this to stills from the movie, Owen is just way too tiny. I would say that the Amber Collection figures actually work better for that particular scene. So if you have Owen Grady in that line, then great. But they might be just a little too big to be in scale with the figure in any other situation. Then just for fun, here it is with the Blind Bag minifigure, which suffers from the same wonky proportions it would seem. Anyway, it's fun to see their smallest alongside their largest. As a final Mattel comparison, I went ahead and brought in the Wild Pack Baby Brachiosaurus, just because I like to make myself cry, I guess. And I'm surprised at how perfectly this works. I mean, the Wild Pack Brak even has the right colors, and it's just, dear sweet little foot, do you remember the way to the Great Valley? Retweet if you cry every time. As for more general comparisons, I wanted to bring in some big sauropod models for my collection, just so you can get an idea of how much this Apatosaurus action figure dwarfs even the largest collector pieces I own. Here it is with Bastian, the Nanmu Apatosaurus, a beautiful model that I took a look at during last year's 12 days of reviews, but you can see that it is absolutely tiny next to this big beast. Then we have the Huanga Titan from PNSO, the largest model I own, and although it puts up a better fight, it still can't compete with the Apatosaurus. And that was the Mattel Legacy Collection Apatosaurus. Final thoughts? I think Mattel really showed off their sculpting chops with this one. The head is one of the best looking, most film-accurate depictions we've gotten so far. And the rest of the fine detail is quite well done. The paint is also pretty good for this sort of thing. It captures the broad strokes of the design quite well and actually covers most of the figure, which is impressive. It's also just great to see another massive piece from them that isn't just another super colossal figure. It's another big, beautiful sauropod for their 3 3/4 inch line, which is amazing. That being said, it does still have some very big misses. The proportions are not great, to put it politely. The articulation is very limited, and once again, it doesn't feel like Mattel pushed themselves creatively in order to make something truly unique. We know that they can make big dinosaur figures. They've done almost a half a dozen super colossals, for goodness sake, and they already did the Brack, so making a big figure isn't too special anymore. Better proportions, or more articulation, more posability, or rubber really would have put this thing over the edge in my eyes. As is, it's still objectively impressive and fun, and I am glad to have it, but after a year of Mattel really pushing the envelope to give us highly anticipated playsets, characters, accessories, capture gear, and even real feel rubber on one figure, this just feels like too much of a retreading cash grab if you ask me. And I guess it worked. It's like the Disney live-action remakes, as weird of a comparison as that is. It's just a slightly more crisp retooling of an old idea with nothing new added. But, you know, those always seem to work. Cha-ching! But as always, I want to know what you guys think of this figure. Do you own it yet? Are you planning to pick it up? Do you prefer it or the Brack? And what large figure do you hope to see next? Perhaps a Mamenchisaurus? Or maybe Dreadnoughtus? Leave a comment down below, and as always, thank you so much for tuning in to today's review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again tomorrow, when I'll be visiting the neighboring island of Isla Sorna.